Good call. Ladies and gentlemen, hi and welcome back to Hockey on Tap podcast. This is episode 3 entitled Sweet 16 plus 8. Obviously, that's going to be because we're going to discuss some playoffs. But I'm your host, Bill Dean, and I'm here with my two co-hosts, Steve Echevarria and Mike Sandello, a.k.a. Little Steve and Schwim. And, we're here back again. This happy Memorial Day to all. One quick thing I wanted to touch base on before we get to there. Obviously, we've gotten a lot of feedback and we've gotten a lot of positive reviews, and we really appreciate everybody's love and their viewership. What we wanted to do is all three of us were talking. Please send in your questions. We'll react to them on Facebook Live, but we also want to just if you guys got questions and you want to give us a shout out on Facebook or Instagram or Twitter, we'll reach out and we can answer these while we're on the pod. So, just with that out of the way, I know, Memorial Day, everybody's outside hanging out. Some people are at the beach, hopefully social distancing. Some people are at a lake. Some people are just chilling in their house. So obviously beers are involved, and, we're pretty beer centric on this podcast. So we just wanted to touch base on that, talk some fun. So I'll let Steve start her off. But how was your Memorial Day? What are you drinking? How was your little break?
So my break has been pretty uneventful. For the most part, I've been ordering beers and picking up beers. I ordered a couple from Sigmeister, which I've drank on this podcast before. They do deliver. They do curbside pickup. I've indulged in a lot of that. I've also a place called Suburban Bar and Kitchen in Randolph on Route 10 does crowler fills. So I went ahead and ordered a couple crowlers from this place, which is pretty cool. For those of you unfamiliar with what a crowler is, I'm sure everybody kind of knows what a growler is, which is just a big glass jar that they fill full of beer and they kind of air seal it tight. Crowler is the exact same concept, except they basically can it in the giant 32-ounce can. Cheers. So this here is a Cane Head High, which probably just about every beer drinker has had. It's one of the more popular IPAs that you see on a lot of the menus throughout all the restaurants around here. This is actually their 2000th batch, which I'm pretty excited for. They hopped it pretty heavily, full of more fruit notes and so on. So I actually had a couple sips of it already. And their IPA glass, which if you want to get real beer snobby, for any wine drinkers out there who have ever tried to drink wine out of a red Solo cup and realize that the flavor is much different. The same concept goes with beer and different styles of beer. So there's different glasses you could potentially drink a different style of beer out of. This is specific to IPAs. And the concept of the curves and everything and the weird shape of it, if you can't see, it's a little kind of ribbed here. It's meant to bring out more of the aromas as you drink it. So as you're taking a sip, you're getting more of the aromas through your nose. So you're actually getting a lot more flavor while you're drinking it. But definitely keep checking out local craft breweries. And even, like I said, these local restaurants and, pubs and bars, they're doing a lot of growler fills, crowler fills, even bottle sales. So keep checking them out and support them. Melvin's going to come say hello if you don't mind. There he is. Check out if you're in the area here. Suburban Bar and Kitchen has a great craft beer selection, and you can get just about everything in a crowler fill. Check them out. It's great. And if you're like me and sitting around doing absolutely nothing in Memorial Day weekend because you don't have plans, because all your friends go elsewhere. You guys, leaving you by yourself, you get a lot of beer to drink, so definitely recommended.
I'm just going to talk over our little guy here. I actually went somewhere this weekend. I went camping in New York. I've never been camping before, so that was my first time, so that was an experience. Went for 2 days. It was pretty cool. It got pretty cold at night. I don't think I was ready for that. I just doubled up on sweatpants. That was it. So, yeah, good time. Lots of beer drank, lots of fun, fireworks, the whole shebang. My beer that I'm drinking is from a brewery in Farmingdale, New York called Nightmare Brewing. What's cool about these guys is they're all about like death metal and horror, and which I like. I like horror genre a lot. So all their cans have really kind of morbid artwork on it and stuff like that. But they also have explanations of why they call their beer what they call it. This one is called Crucifixion. They have a whole explanation about that. And then what they also do is, which I thought was pretty cool, is they a lot of beers do like what it pairs well with.
Now I can see you.
What was I saying? Oh yeah, what it pairs well with, like a food or something like that. They actually pick music to pair their beers with, and they say this one specific one pairs well with Angel Maker Bloodthirster.
I do
So
not know what that is.
check it out.
Metal.
We should check it out. See if it actually holds true. Can you hear him?
Dean, we're having some technical difficulties. I cannot hear you.
Sorry. So I'm drinking Smash Coconut.
No, go back to
milk
mute.
stout.
Go back to mute. We don't actually want to hear you.
Beer Tree Brew. It's out of Port Crane, New York. It's it's a coconut stout, but it's really good. So I'm pretty impressed with this. I actually had a couple before this. We're at my my in-laws' lake house, just kind of hanging out, having some dinner, social distance, obviously with masks. So, but for all those out there having fun, if you got a chance to go on the boat or go to a beach, hope you had a good day. I know it's been tough these last couple of weeks, so hopefully there's a little bit of sunshine and some farmer stands, which I definitely got. So, the arms definitely. We're
tan or red. I think it's more red than tan.
Definitely red. No, if we get 100 to 200,000 followers, I'll take off my shirt for a whole episode. So if we get
Oh,
that,
God.
Oh God.
Hey,
Hey,
let's
where's
get
the
them.
beef?
Oh, there'll be beef.
we know where the beef is.
Oh yeah,
It's just covered at the moment, and
It's covered.
maybe we don't.
This is actually a
Covered
very
beef.
chiseled top, so I don't want to scare impress any ladies.
You'd be
out
surprised. There's a 6-pack underneath there
Well, there is. There's a 6-pack underneath the waist.
and a whole keg.
So let's do this 2014 playoff. There's been a lot of talk on a bunch of different websites. A lot of talk on NHL.com, just on radio. They're talking about having, like as you said, a 2014 playoff. We talked about this last week. The good thing is, a lot of guys in the know have churned out some good information on possible matchups, and that's one of the big things, right? So, we all have this little, tweet from Elliot Freeman that was sent out. It shows proposed 2014 playoff. Obviously going through the matchups, they would have a mini little round robin that would be for the top 4 teams. So Boston, Tampa, Washington, and the Flyers would all go into this little mini playoff along with the Western Conference. You have St. Louis, Colorado, Vegas, and Dallas, the Stars. I'm sure your brother's going to be really happy about that. They would really have this little round robin of games. And then on the other side of the brackets, you'd have 8 teams from each conference, East and West. They'd all have a little mini battle for those last 4 spots. 3-team playoff is 3-team playoff, or it was 5. I don't remember what I said, but yeah.
Sorry, Facebook Live is making me laugh.
Well, anyway,
That's a good comment there.
Good comment. I got to take a look. So, but anyways, so let's just go right into it because that first round playoff and that 8-9 seed in the East, they're looking at Toronto and Columbus. I don't know what you guys think, but I think Toronto, with their ability to get healthy and maybe get a little back on track, I think they're a team that could move and could create some ruckus in there. I do think with their goaltender Frederik Andersen, obviously their top 3 lines are absolutely ridiculous. Defense, little suspect, but they do have some guys that can move the puck. Morgan Riley, Barry. What do you guys think? What would you guys say for that matchup?
So let's preface this to start. So the one thing that has been completely finalized is the structure of these playoffs. So this is what we're getting. So the NHL did all 31 teams voted on the playoff structure when they finally do come back. So the when and where is still completely unknown. and also the details about testing protocols and so on. So the only thing we know is how, when it does come back, how it'll be structured. So what you were saying, Dean, with all these matchups and stuff in the round robin with the top 4 teams and so on. But getting into Toronto and Columbus, it's one of those matchups where Toronto, I believe, Toronto is the 6th seed playing the, or is it Carolina's 6 playing the Rangers 11, correct? And
Toronto's 8 and Columbus 9.
Okay, so that's so 8 and 9.
Mm-hmm.
So in theory, seems like a lot closer of a matchup, and I think it'll be a lot closer than people would think. Columbus is not a team to balk at, especially now that they're healthy. They're going to get the entirety of their team back, solid goaltending, and the system that they play is very much like the Boston Bruins. They're kind of like a poor man's Boston Bruins. They don't have the skill and the talent of Boston, but they do play that similar style, which can kind of get in the way of anybody's dreams of making any sort of Stanley Cup push. I mean, you saw it with Tampa Bay last year. It's the same coaching style, the same system, minus a couple, obviously very key players. But I think you're right. I do see Toronto coming out of the series. They should, at least. I mean, you would think Toronto would kind of finally make a push in these playoffs at one point or another. When is the question, if they can put everything together. But I think if you're looking on paper, and even statistically with this season, Toronto's had some pretty horrible lapses throughout the course of the season. But I don't see any reason why Toronto shouldn't come out. But this is, I don't know, Schwim, how you feel, but I would not be completely surprised if Columbus did end up winning the series. However, I do think Toronto should have a pretty easy, best of 5 series for this opening round. I see Toronto winning it 3-1, in my opinion.
I like Toronto probably in that series too. Although now it's a 5-game series, so I think it's like the winning the first game is going to be like huge now. In all the best of 7 series, you win the first game, okay, that's good and everything, but then the next game you can tie it up 1-1 or go up 2-0 or whatever it is. This one, you win the first game, you're like, you have a pretty good head start and everything. So I think on paper Toronto should beat Columbus, but Columbus is like one of those teams where they're like a playoff, like built for playoff hockey. I'm not saying they're going to run the playoffs or anything like that, but they're a team that's built like that. And how often do you see like a high flying, high scoring team not be able to replicate that in the playoffs, and the team who's more structured and maybe a little bit bigger comes out on top? I mean, that happened last year. Tampa was a high flying scoring team and they couldn't do anything against Columbus. So, but I think it's all like, again, a lot of this is based off of if the season never ended and kept going, how these teams were playing and what they were going towards and everything. Now with this huge pause, anybody can beat anybody. Yeah. Everyone's getting the same start, and especially these teams playing their best of 5 series, I think have a legitimate shot to. There's definitely going to be at least 1 or 2 upsets, I would think, from a team who wasn't even in the playoffs that's going to be in this playoff and be able to go into the final 16. So on paper, I would say Toronto should beat them, but I could easily see Columbus beating them. If I had to pick somebody, what the hell? I'll pick Columbus. I'll go against Columbus. You. Why not? All right. Wow, former Tampa Bay Lightning, John Tortorella. I got to go.
Hey, Torts has every team that he has in the playoffs. He has them ready and rare to go. They're blocking shots. They're taking them for the team. He's a great coach. Obviously, he was former Ranger coach too. We had some really good years with him. But and they have obviously the roster. They have 2 solid goaltenders. Who knows who they'll actually go in with going into the season. But Seth Jones, Zach Werenski are 2 elite defensemen. Cam Atkinson, Foligno, Josh Anderson, Pierre-Luc Dubois. You got a lot of guys in that team that can play hockey, and they're a good team, solid team, and I could see that.
They have a rookie goalie that could come in and I think play.
Yeah. Well, Merzlikins is, I think, almost certainly going to start the playoffs based on the end of last season. But I mean, either or, even Korpisalo. I mean, their statistics between the both of them were great. And Merzlikins was top in the league in a lot of stats. So, I mean, they're going to be a tough team.
That's what I'm saying. I think they're a playoff team. Like they're
agree,
built
yeah.
for like
I
the
agree.
playoffs.
That's like one of the only
regular season, they're like whatever, but
Yeah.
playoffs, they're like a tough team.
It's a legitimate playoff matchup when you're talking about these add-in teams.
Yep.
Between Toronto and Columbus.
So I see you talking to Matt Jr. Obviously everybody on Facebook Live. We're following along. Appreciate all the questions. We'll get answer some when we can. But
give us some beer selections.
Yeah, true. Give us beer selections. But you and Matt were talking about the 2014 playoffs and those two teams that vetoed having this 2014 playoff. One of those teams, which is a part of this. Sorry, 31. I just meant 2014. Yeah. All right. So, anyways, two of the teams. One of them, that vetoed was the Carolina Hurricanes, which we'll talk about the next matchup with my New York Rangers, because I'm a member of the team. Anyways, so the big thing of this series.
You have the jersey, so obviously
he plays
you're on the team.
Only when he feels like it, though. Currently, he hasn't felt like it. That's why you don't see him playing.
Yeah. Anyways, so.
You're not burnt. You're New York Ranger red.
Yeah, I did that on purpose. That's great.
You can tell that to people. You're welcome.
Yeah,
you can use that.
Yeah, I did that on purpose. Thank you. No, but the Rangers obviously, going into that end of the season, I've talked about it a couple times, but they started to get on a roll. They started to get feeling each other. They were going through and making sure that
I guess.
Yeah, feeling each other. Yep, I know. Thank you. No, but they're feeling playing with each other. They knew where they were going to be. They were making smart decisions. Obviously, they took Colorado to overtime, which that's a top team in the West. They have the goaltender. I think that can do some really good things in a playoff series. You saw him. 12 games, 10-2. Had a great start to his rookie year. You got some defensemen that can carry play. Adam Fox, obviously Tony DeAngelo, who Schwim knows pretty well.
Former Tampa Bay.
He's obviously a big offensive defenseman. I think over 50 points from the rear position. The forwards.
He's just dropping all these sexual innuendos, and it's
making me uncomfortable. I was waiting for you guys to notice. Hey, I'm
glad we're not there with you.
The feel on the tongue, I figured would have really started that transition. So, anyways,
you stepped your game up a bit since the first one. You've dropped like 3 already.
I'm trying to get funny over here. Well, anyways,
I'm drinking a double IPA. I get it. You're trying to take advantage of me.
It's hard work.
This thing's like 10.5%. I think. Yeah, it is.
Right, keep drinking.
Okay.
You get more entertaining.
I think mine's 6.8 for a milk stout. Anyways,
yeah,
so forwards
10.6.
That KZB line, Kreider, Zibanejad, and Buchnevich. Once Kreider, he should be back obviously by the time playoff starts. So that's a great line. That second line, Panarin, Strome, and Jesper Fast, and then they have some very good depth in Kako and a bunch of other players. But they're a team that, like I said, was on a roll. Hopefully they can pick that up going to the playoffs. But obviously the Hurricanes, great team, great defense. Their goaltending situation is not ideal, I think, going into a playoff series, but they do have some forwards that do a lot of work. Sebastian Aho is, I think, a very underrated forward in the league. Let's see what you guys had to say. I think that the Rangers do take the series. I think that it's a building block for them for future years because they're so much fun to watch. But what do you guys think?
I think had the season continued and finished, I don't know who I would have as far as placement as to who's going to be making the playoffs, but at the end of the season at least, I think the Rangers had a legitimate chance to squeeze in there, even being out and having that bottom 4 or 5 teams that were trying to make those last 2 playoff spots. I think even if they didn't, I might make the argument where they probably were at least deserving. Or at least more deserving than some of those other teams. They may have just dug themselves into a hole too early. So one of those second half teams that just was excelling. very well at the end of the season and looked, legitimately scary. It was not an easy matchup on that calendar for anybody coming in, any of the playoff teams if they had to face the Rangers. I mean, they were in playoff mode already. But also, again, does momentum carry over? I mean, if you're going to make an educated guess, I say probably not. I mean, it's a new season.
This is too long of a pause, I think.
He probably agrees with me. So we're talking about a new season here, so it's all about how these teams start. But I agree with everything that you said with the Rangers lineup. Looks like they can make, and going back to the Toronto-Columbus matchup, saying that it's a legitimate playoff matchup. I also think that this is also another legitimate playoff matchup between Carolina and New York. Carolina are no slouches. It should be a pretty even matchup. I want to give the matchup to Carolina, and I don't do that just because I want to argue everything that you say, because it's just my natural defensive instinct. But I want to say that Carolina gets the edge, just because I do think they have a stronger lineup and a stronger, more experienced, I should say, lineup. X factor could be goaltending. We don't know Shesterkin. Excuse me if I'm saying it wrong. Shesterkin. I've heard it two different ways. Shesterkin. We haven't seen him in playoffs. We've seen him lose 2 games out of 12. I mean, in regulation, which is no joke. And just throughout his entire career so far, even going back to Russia, the kid just does not lose. At some point, that's going to end. He's going to lose games. Just goalies lose games. But it's another interesting matchup where I can't definitively predict who's going to come out of it. But if I had to give the edge to somebody, I would say I think Carolina's got a little bit more when this all starts. And I'm kind of scrapping the end of the season there and having 2 teams come in fresh, new season starting, look at their lineups, look for holes and weaknesses. And obviously you can't take momentum. There is no more momentum. I mean, you could say that they're continuing or they've picked up where they left off. But as far as momentum goes, I think that's all kind of out the window at this point. But I would give I think I'm giving Carolina the edge right now, although I would not be shocked if I was wrong.
I'm going to say something real quick here, and I hope I don't do this ever again, but I'm going to agree with Dean.
Oh, God.
I know. It hurts me to say this, but I'm going to agree with Dean that I think the Rangers would take the series against Carolina. Also, if the season didn't end and everything just played straight through and say the Rangers got the 8th seed and they would play Boston, right, first round, that is a series I hate both of those teams. I hate the Rangers and I hate the Bruins. I would watch that series. I would want to absolutely watch that series.
Yeah,
I don't like either of those teams, but I think that would be a fantastic opening round series.
See, now I would be just furious because I'm going to be facing in a first round matchup my buddy Kevin Halloran, who you guys obviously know very well, who probably is listening, but that would be absolutely nauseating because he would comment on every single thing. But anyways, I love you, Kevin. No, but just one thing I didn't touch on when I was talking about the forwards for the Hurricanes. I mean, their centers down, all 4 deep. I mean, you're talking about Sebastian Aho, Vincent Trocheck, and Jordan Staal as those top 3, and that's scary going into a playoff series. 3 centers that can dominate play. Obviously Svechnikov, Teravainen. You got Justin Williams, who's got that playoff pedigree. Nino Niederreiter, Dzingel, even if he comes back healthy, and then the defense, right? You got Slavin, Brady Shea, obviously Ranger trade, which is something we can get into later on. I had a pretty good idea on if knowing what we know now and the trading deadline that had happened. Do you think some of those trades that had happened during the deadline would have happened now, knowing that this COVID-19 would have? But we'll touch base on that in another podcast because I think it's pretty interesting. But Dougie Hamilton, he was hurt for a little while. Him coming back, Sami Vatanen, who hasn't even played a game with them.
Their defensive core is fantastic.
Hamilton was dominating points and everything until right before he got hurt.
Like I said, their lineup is no joke, and they have a bond. I think kind of maybe not like any other team in the league right now, but
because all of Canada hates them.
Yeah, bunch of jerks.
Storm surge, baby.
But at the same time,
they hate them.
At the same time, they don't get, and nobody really thinks of Carolina as they're somebody who's not that well experienced with the NHL, when you think about Carolina, you don't think much about their fan base and how passionate they are. But that home ice advantage for Carolina is a huge difference maker, and without that, I think that's going to be that's crippling them at least slightly. The fact that they don't have that backing them. But like I said, their lineup it's a intriguing matchup. The Rangers and Carolina. Carolina has a great team that is capable of upsetting last year the Washington Capitals. But again, we're in a new season, a new season from last year's playoffs, but also a new season with these new playoffs starting. So who knows? So we just go based on paper and what we've seen, glimpses of what they've seen the course of the season.
No, it's a good series, and I'm going to be obviously on the edge of my seat watching it, but it'll be fun. The next series, I don't know if you want to touch on it very much. To my family members that are Islanders fans, you guys suck, haha. But that Islanders Florida series, I mean, other than those, Florida and Long Island, I don't think there's many people that are going to be into that one. It'll be good hockey. Florida's a great team. Islanders have that tenacity, and they continually go at you. It's going to be a dogfight there. Yeah, I mean, Florida, I'd give the edge to them. I just think that the top end talent, Barkov, they just have so many good players down there. They're lesser known in this playoff, but I do think they have the ability to make it through that series. If you guys want to give a quick prediction on that, let's talk some.
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to give the edge to, and not to discredit Joel Quenneville down there in Florida and his playoff pedigree, but I think right now the X factor would be coaching because their lineups are, pretty similar. I think when you look up and down, I think they're pretty even. And I want to give the X factor to both coaches just because of how well respected and how their systems, they're both Stanley Cup winners. Obviously, both with different teams, not with their current teams. The Islanders, they swept the Penguins last year in a really kind of ugly style of play, but it worked. And I think Trotz is very capable of figuring out the style. And I think Joel Quenneville, while his style is capable of being very successful, I think it's very beatable, as you've seen after they've won Stanley Cups when they just weren't winning pretty consistently in the playoffs specifically. So I want to give the edge to Trotz. I think Trotz can outcoach Quenneville, and just based on their lineups being pretty similar, I'm going to give the edge to the Islanders. I don't see a lot of intrigue from a lot of fans in this matchup.
I don't see anything right now. Oh, okay.
I don't want to I don't want to disparage any teams just because they have lesser fan bases. Florida, obviously notorious for not selling out games. And the Islanders at Barclays also having some troubles there. Nassau, no problems at all. But again, home ice is irrelevant. But yeah, I don't want to be the Debbie Downer, but not an overly exciting series at all. I think it's just the winner is moving on to lose the next round, realistically. But if I'm going to pick one, I'm going to say Trotz over Quenneville.
Schumer?
The loser or the winner of that one, if all the seeding stays the same with the 4-bye teams,
yeah, I don't think they're reseeding.
Then they would be playing Tampa. Whoever wins that one, second round,
depending how Tampa seeds.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. But if they all stay the same, like 1, 2, 3, 4, like they are now, pretty much, 7 and 10 would play the number 2, which would be Tampa. I don't care. Honestly, I don't care who wins that series. If I had to pick one, I would pick Florida because I guess I don't really like the Islanders. I'll give Jeff Turner a shout out though. He's the only Islander fan I like. The main reason why I don't like the Islanders is because of their commentary. I cannot listen to a live Islanders game.
Yeah,
it's very difficult. I'd rather just put it on mute and watch the game without anything.
Mute it and put on a radio broadcast.
Something.
It's pretty. Yeah, I mean that's a pretty bad.
I'll just have like
radio broadcast.
They need some. I don't know. Anyway, but if I had to pick a team, I would pick Florida out of that one.
Yeah. All right, let's go to that 5-12 Pittsburgh Montreal. I know, Steve, you're worried about this series. Maybe I think that Pittsburgh would get the win in this series, but I'll go right to you. Obviously, your feelings on how your team would fare against the Canadians.
I think it's a sweep. Just to start things off, I know you probably don't, but I think this is, out of all the first round series in the East, I think this is a sweep.
So let's put things into perspective. This is the 24th ranked team making it into the 24 teams here. So Montreal is the bottom of the barrel as far as the 24 teams who've squeaked into this playoffs. Hence the Sweet 16 plus 8. 71 games played, 19 regulation wins for Montreal, finishing the season 31-31-19. That's good for 10 points out of the 8th spot when the season ended, which is extraordinarily mediocre. I mean, 10 points out at that point in the season, you have 11 games left. The likelihood of Montreal making that, they'd have to have a whole lot of luck and a whole lot of teams losing and a whole lot of winning. But that being said, here we are.
Regulation.
Here we are talking about matchups, and here we are with Montreal in the playoffs. So the main thing, you want to look at the lineups. There is no match in the lineups. Granted, Montreal's got some good players, but if you put up Pittsburgh Penguins matchup with the Montreal Canadiens matchup, it is just men amongst boys for the most part. Montreal gets back Thomas Tatar, their leading scorer. Pittsburgh Penguins get back Jake Gensel. If you're going to get back one player and match it with another player, at this point, granted, I'm a Penguins fan, I'm taking Jake Gensel over Thomas Tatar any day. The X factor, of course, you have world-class talent Carey Price, who statistically this season pretty bad. Lost a lot of games. Goals against average 2.79, save percentage 0.909, both good for 32nd in the league out of 31 teams. So statistically pretty mediocre. But looking into the beginning of the season, before the season started, they do an annual survey amongst the players, amongst 588 players, who the players vote as the best goalie in the NHL. At a whopping 41.55%, Carey Price is the best goalie from the players. That's the players. Second in the voting, Marc-Andre Fleury at 8.93%. So it is an overwhelming majority of the players vote Carey Price as the best goalie in the league. So this is nothing to sleepwalk past this team. The team itself is the definition of mediocrity. When you look at their record and the statistics and even Carey Price's statistics, but you cannot eliminate the fact that Carey Price is a world-class, if not the best goalie in the entire world. And if anybody can win, if any single player can win you a series, it is your goaltender. That being said, I still think the Penguins are going to win. I still think they should. There's no reason they shouldn't. Even if Carey Price is as world-class as he is, I still don't think that's going to be enough to overcome the Penguins' full, healthy lineup, minus Dominic Simone, who I don't think a single Penguin fan will miss. He's got a lot of criticism, but we'll see. I know I was reading an article from Dave Molinari, great Pittsburgh Penguins blog writer, who had the Penguins winning in 2.5 games. I might agree with him there that it probably should. There's no single reason the Penguins should lose this series, and if they do,
that would be the biggest upset in the playoffs.
It would certainly be the biggest upset in the playoffs, but also at the same time, I think that would be a enormous blemish on the structure of how they decided to vote out these playoffs, having the 24 out of 31 team in the NHL move on to the phase 2, which is basically the typical 16 team playoff.
And a lot of fans will be upset about that. Obviously, the traditional pundits about, you can't have a bad team because it just, leads to this kind of thing where anybody can win. But that's actually, I think, part of the fun about hockey. Any team and any day can win, a game and win a short series like that because a hot goaltender can go on a run or players can play out of their mind. We're talking about the Canadians, but they do have some players that are still have the ability to win games and take them over. Shea Weber, they have a good young rookie in Nick Suzuki. Max
Brendan
Domi is
Gallagher.
still Brendan Gallagher. Max Domi, I think, is still a really good player. We talked about Tatar, Philip Deneau. I mean, they do have some players. Arturi Lehkonen. They have some players that do create excitement and fun play, and obviously, like we said, anyone can win hockey games. It's just something that happens, and I think that's where hockey can be so fun, other than basketball, where it's the best teams are going to win. But,
During the regular season, any team can beat any team. The one thing I will say real quick about the structure of this of these playoffs is I am glad that they made this play-in best of 5 as opposed to best of 3, because I mean you can take a matchup like this and you can have Carey Price play out of his mind Carey Price hockey for 48 hours and the series is over for that team. So I think it's the 5 games is better, I think, in theory, and I think you should be able to eliminate some of these teams that should not be there, and basically give the teams that should be there a nice competitive game of hockey to prepare them for the actual playoffs.
No, so that's why I have. Sorry, no, I got Pittsburgh in 4. I think that Carey Price will steal a game, but I think Pittsburgh's.
4.
Sorry.
Okay.
Well, yeah, 4 games total. I think that Montreal does steal 1 game, but I think Pittsburgh's just depth and their ability to roll out consistent offense and just overall play is gonna drown Montreal. Before we go into the top 4 teams in the East, I figured we'd do a little Western Conference playoff seeds, that 5 through 12 matchup being Edmonton and Chicago. We talked about this before. I think this is a big time series. Chicago with that playoff pedigree. They have bunch of players on that team: Kane, Taves, Brendan Saad. They have Duncan Keith, Seabrook, and they have that core. Sorry, well, he's out for this year. Sorry, but they have that core that knows. Yep, they have that core that knows how to win. But then they also have young guys. They got shoot, I'm forgetting the sniper's name, but they have a bunch of young guys that are coming in. Yep, a bunch of young guys coming in, and they could steal series. Edmonton, obviously, with that offense, Draisaitl, McDavid, obviously, MVP candidate. Draisaitl, same thing, but they have a good young offense. I would think I'd take Edmonton in a 5-game series, but Chicago has that ability to win a series, and who knows if Crawford can go ahead and who knows if Crawford can go ahead and win it and steal again, but. I take Edmonton. Schwim, what do you think about this series? You think Chicago's ability to have that playoff acumen makes this a good series, or you think Edmonton should roll with it?
I think Edmonton should be able to roll over them just because based on the season, they haven't been very good. I think the only thing that scares people is Chicago's past, not their present. They're very good years ago. They're not very good right now. Edmonton's a very good, young, fast, high-scoring team. Goaltending, okay. Defense, also okay. But I think they should be able to roll over Chicago pretty easily. I wouldn't say maybe sweep, but I think they have way too much talent to not be able to come out of that series over Chicago. Chicago, I think, is one of those teams that's on maybe the decline. But again, any team could steal any series. It doesn't matter, I think, at this point. But if we're going just on paper and what we know, I think Edmonton would have no problem beating Chicago.
I think this matchup, and Chicago being a team pretty fairly out of the playoff picture, this is one of the most intriguing matchups I think that there might be in the entirety of these playoffs. It has the potential to be. I won't say that it definitely will be. Here you have Edmonton, who is kind of the Chicago team of the past. They have these elite offensive players on their team, which Chicago had during their cup runs. They still do. I mean, they're Patrick Kane, Jonathan Tays, Brandon Side, Kubalik. They still have they have a great lineup, and they were playing better. But of course, they're streaky, and when they're bad, I mean, man, they are bad. Chicago. So this could be a very fast series, I think. And
they can't beat teams like they used to.
No, they're not a dominant
They're not
team,
as good as
and
they used to be.
And I think a lot of that was Joel Quenneville's system being very effective until it wasn't, and not being able to adjust his system in order to compete with the rest of the league. Now with a different coach, a new playoff opportunity, I think this Robin Leonard trade is going to come back and bite them in the ass.
Yeah, when Corey Crawford gets hurt in the first 10 minutes of the first period.
Yeah, in retrospect, I can't imagine if they knew they were making a playoff run, they're not letting go of Robin
Leonard.
Yeah. Robin Leonard is supposed to be their guy, and that's the guy you're riding in the playoffs if you're Chicago. I mean, in my opinion, if they still had him, but I think this matchup could be really fun. It's a lot. There's not a lot of defense amongst the two of them.
There's a lot of star power in this one.
A lot of star power, a lot of skill, just raw skill.
That's why I think Edmonton, skill-wise,
it can be very
Dreisaitl's
high scoring.
One of the top. He's emerging as like one of the top 5 people in the NHL now.
You have two of the,
and McDavid's up there.
It's almost like a Crosby
one or
Malkin.
two.
When you go back years ago,
they're like the new kind of Crosby Malkin almost.
Top 2 of the 3 in the league. However you want to rank Malkin, Crosby, Ovechkin back then. But yeah, Draisaitl, McDavid, and then whoever else you want to throw in, McKinnon. I mean, those two, Draisaitl and McDavid, are legitimate top 5 players in the league. But if you want to go back to that vote I brought up about Carey Price, with the players voting, players voted pretty unanimously that Connor McDavid was the best player in the league. However, when asked which player they'd want on the roster to win a single game, he was not the top voted player. That was actually Sidney Crosby leapfrogged him there.
I was going to say,
different situation.
Sorry, buddy. I would say when I first got into this, a couple guys that I wanted to talk about, Kirby Dach, obviously Dylan Strome, and then the guy I was thinking actually about was Alex DeBrincat. I think he's good young sniper. Yeah. And then you look on, they also have Alex Nylander, who's going to be a very good player. But you look on defense, Adam Boqvist, who might be one of the top defensemen from, that draft 2 years ago. I think he's going to be really good. But they have some infusion of youth there, and obviously on Edmonton's side, you got the 2 studs. But then you also got, Anthony Ciu, who they traded for from Detroit, who I think was it's a very good trade for them. Zach Kassian, who can bring the grit. James Neal, who can score goals. Obviously, Steve's seen it. Nugent Hopkins and Kyler Yamamoto, who's been awesome on that line with the 2 big guys. I know he's been in and out and in play, but it's been a great series. Something I'll definitely tune into. Let's like I said, I think Edmonton takes that and we'll go from there. A couple other series. We've got Nashville, Arizona. I think Nashville's depth and their goaltending. I know that Pekka Rinne hasn't been great, but he does know he's in there and has the ability to have a great game. Arizona, I think they're young, they're rebuilt. They're starting to go through the aches and pains of being a good team. I don't think they take this series, but I think they're ones to pass through. So I'd say Nashville, and then we'll do both series right here, but we'll just do also Calgary, Winnipeg. It's not the Battle of Alberta that everybody wanted, but Calgary with their depth and Winnipeg, maybe a team that wasn't expecting to be in the playoffs, but definitely, with Trouba leaving and a couple other guys leaving, they had a very good year. Morrissey's a really good defenseman. Obviously, they have that skill up front. So let's talk about those 2 series. I'll take, Hellebuck. He's had, I think he's the President winner, but we'll talk about that later. So like I said, I'd take Nashville against Arizona and Calgary against Winnipeg. What do you guys think?
I mean, I don't even think the Nashville-Arizona matchup warrants any sort of discussion. It's just Arizona has, even more so than Montreal, I don't think there's anything Arizona really has that. I mean, they had a nice Cinderella run at the end of last season. Haven't really matched it this season. I mean, granted, they've had a ton of injuries, especially in the goaltending. situation, but they I don't think they have much to do any sort of upset. I mean, Nashville's a good team. I mean, Nashville's not the Nashville that went to the Stanley Cup Finals 3 years back, but I don't think Arizona has a single thing that's gonna be able to upset Nashville. So I think this should be a pretty boring series. If Arizona wins a game, maybe, but like I said, quick and boring as far as that series goes. I think Calgary and Winnipeg should be relatively exciting, maybe. But I don't really know. I want to give the edge to Calgary. I want to, but I don't think I can. So I kind of want to give the edge to Winnipeg there.
The goaltending.
Just because of goaltending.
Mm-hmm.
Calgary,
way better.
Kevin Dean, the good-looking Dean, commented about which team is most concerned with their goalie situation. I want to say it's Calgary. I don't think Calgary has had any sort of. I mean, Riddick has had moments where he looks like he should be the number one guy, and then he's just awful for a spell. And then Cam Talbot comes in and he's pretty good until he's awful.
Mm-hmm.
And then David Riddick goes back in and is good for a game, and then he's awful again. I don't know who they're going to ride. I think probably Riddick goes first, but I think again this might be a pretty quick series for Calgary. I think they were pretty defeated. A lot of their star players and trade rumors, pretty much the entire lineup. So I'm going to give the edge to Winnipeg there. I don't know, Schwim, if you feel the same.
I think this is all recorded, right? So we're going to be looking back on this and see how good or bad our predictions are. Can you imagine how bad it's going to be when like Arizona upsets Nashville and all this, and like all this will just be right out the window. But there's no reason why Nashville shouldn't beat Arizona, and I like Winnipeg over Calgary just because I think their goaltending is light years ahead of Calgary's, and in the playoffs that's huge. You need your goaltender to be your best player, I think, in the playoffs. So, and I think they have a really, really, really good American-born goaltender.
That's a massive advantage of Connor Hellebuck versus anybody who Calgary.
They have a huge advantage in that. So, and they can match skill for skill, I think, with them. So, I would think Winnipeg would be able to beat Calgary probably in 4. I'll go 4.
Mm-hmm.
So let's talk about this 7-10 matchup quickly. We'll just give a quick little synopsis, and then we'll get to the top 4 since we're running out of time. But Vancouver, Minnesota, Vancouver obviously is a good young team. Pettersson is I think going to be one of those next talents that comes up and takes the top 10 mantle. I think he's just extremely, extremely talented and good. Brock Besser, great sniper, obviously fantastic lettuce. And they got
a good head of lettuce on
him. They got a shit ton of good players over there.
Mine's covered right now.
That's true. Yeah. No, they've grown with this team, and I really like this team. It's up and coming. It's going to be one of those teams that leads the West for a little while. But and then Minnesota on the other side. I know that they're an older team, but they do have a couple of seasoned veterans. Zuccarello from the former Ranger. Obviously, Eric Stahl. They have a lot of good older players that can carry the mantle and maybe take over a Vancouver squad that might be learning their ways. I'd think that Minnesota would take this one over a young team, but let's give you a quick points, and then we'll talk about Schwim's.
I'm going to say one thing. I'm going to say one thing about this series, Vancouver, Minnesota. I have no prediction for it, but I have a prediction for 2024 Vancouver versus New York rematch Stanley Cup Final. All right? You heard it here first. 2024 Vancouver rematch. Kirk McLean's going to come years. Down.
That'd be 30 years since the.
That's what's going to happen.
I'll take that.
Two young up-and-coming teams are going to grow in the next 4 years, and boom, both of them are starting up. I'm going to call it right now.
God's ears.
You're right here now. This series, I don't care. Go ahead.
The only thing I will say about this going back to the best-looking Dean's question, Sir Kevin.
Whoever Kevin Dean wants to win the series, that's who I'm going with.
Yeah, this is Minnesota was second on my list of goaltending situation, and Minnesota, Devin Dubnyk has been miserable for basically the majority of the entirety of the season.
Markstrom's been awesome.
I would take him over Markstrom
Dubnyk.
Has been great. Stalock from Minnesota has been better. Are they going to ride Stay Luck in the playoffs? Is he a playoff goalie? Who knows? Markstrom's a much better goalie than both of them. I'm giving the edge to Vancouver.
All right, so let's talk about this little seeding tournament that they want to have for teams 1 to 4 in the East and the West. Obviously we talked about Pittsburgh, Philly, Washington, and Tampa, and then on the other side,
not Pittsburgh,
Boston, not Pittsburgh.
Sorry, Boston. Sorry, Boston.
Let's not give the Penguins more credit than they deserve. All right, I got to hear this crap all the time.
All right, so let's hear Schwim. Go ahead. I know you're not happy about this. Let's talk about it.
No, and I've said before, I never liked the 24-team playoff scenario because, one, I think it's way too many teams given the current COVID situation, that alone. But based on Alex Korn is Tampa's team representative, and he was him and Carolina's were the only two to vote no on the proposal or whatever.
Yep.
And he cited that he thought it was unfair that teams, that like we said before, Montreal, it's 10 points out that weren't going to make the playoffs most likely are in a playoff scenario. So I agree with that, and that's what I said the whole time. I didn't think any of these teams who weren't in the playoffs should automatically be just thrown into the playoffs when a team who's been there the entire season basically is, not getting taken advantage of. Another reason he said that he didn't like it was that the teams that are playing the the first slot of games,
type of style.
they're going to be in play. They're going to be in playoff mode, like the Pittsburgh Montreal series, all those series. Those teams are going to be in playoff mode, while the top 4 seeds are playing a round robin thing that means nothing, basically
Exhibition games.
They're not going to play. They know they're in. You're not going to play as hard as you can when you know you're in.
Yeah.
No, but you're also playing the teams. You're also playing the teams that are most likely going to be a couple of those teams that make it to that finals and that semifinals. And I think that they're trying to match up with those teams and feel their way through it. I think that's actually a good thing for those teams, that they get to see those big teams and match with them and see how, if they see them in the future, how that series will play off. I think that's actually a good thing.
I mean, one of my concerns that I thought of from the start was that if you're playing the best teams, so you're playing the top 4, and this goes East and West. So if you're playing the top 4 teams, you're going to get the best competition that you can. So this is like the cream of the crop of the playoffs that you're preparing for with 3 games, right? So you're playing everybody once. But going back to Schwim's point is, how hard are these teams going to play? How
they don't want to risk anybody getting hurt because they know they're into the second round.
And especially when home ice advantage is irrelevant. What is the real benefit of going all out and risking injury in a non-elimination round when seeding doesn't really make a difference,
I mean, obviously it's better than just going in cold, right? So you don't want to do it a stupid exhibition game against Detroit or any of these teams that are already out of the playoffs. You want to face a good team, and you already know that the other 16 teams, 8-8 on the other side are obviously playing in a series. So you want to get good competition. You want to get good games. I could see players like, teams like Boston, Tampa, Washington, Philly, them sitting maybe a player like Stamkos, like Pasternak, sitting them for a game and maybe giving them a little bit of a rest, but then also getting them into game form against teams that obviously are going to be, teams that they might have to go face in that semis and that conference finals. So,
right.
I don't see. Obviously, there's positives and negatives to both sides, but I just can't. You don't want to go in cold. So, same thing with St. Louis, Colorado, Vegas, and Dallas on the other side. St. Louis is probably the team to beat in the whole playoff tournament. But a team like Colorado can kind of see how they're going to match up against them. Vegas and Dallas on the other side. Dallas is a good young team. Obviously, they have Ben and Sagan who are playoff tested, battle tested. But Vegas, getting some kinks out for Fleury if he's in net, or if it's Leonard, who knows? But what? No,
I think
cat.
I smell something.
No, is it the cat?
The cat. He's blaming the cat. No,
Anyways.
But I do. I know what you're saying. Although I think that I see this round robin with the top 4 teams being a preseason style of play rather than actual competition, like the bottom tier team, like the phase 1 teams who are playing a best of 5 elimination series are playing for their lives.
Those are going to be much more
whereas the top
intense than
four
a
teams, yeah, the
than an
intensity
exhibition
is
thing.
going to be completely different, and I see that potentially being a problem for those top teams.
All right, well, everybody, we really appreciate tuning in. Quickly, I gave Smash Coconuts a 4. It's really good. Great Mugsack. Go test it out. You too. What do you think?
Yeah,
Your beers.
Cane Head High to 2000th batch. If you liked Cane Head High, the original batch, check this out. It's probably a limited release, so if you can find it wherever, I don't know if they can or bottle it, but if you can find it at your local brew pub, restaurant, whatever, who's doing growler fills, check it out because it is a delicious, refreshing IPA.
NightmareBrewingCo.com. Check them out. Heavy metal and cool artwork and really good beers. They have a lot of good sours, a lot of good IPAs, a lot of good stuff. Check them out.
All right, gents. See you next Monday, episode 4. Schwim, take her home, bud.
That's why I won't do 2 shows tonight anymore, babe. I won't.